Thank you. So this is an introduction to the brand new McKay Community Forest. So in a way you could consider this a creation story. Pictures of Arcata Community Forest at the bottom, and many people who are residents of Humboldt County have appreciated Arcata's forest for its public access and recreation benefits. And Mark gave a great, just brief history and just talking about their terrific program they have. And many of us locally, have been asking for a long time, well, what would it take to replicate that model? And, for us, for today, I'm going to define that model as, community forest as, the premise being that public access and recreation and wood production and forest conservation are compatible. And in particular, we're looking at, ownership of a forest by a small public agency. And so really I'm addressing the question of how did the McKay Community Forest come to be, what were the factors, and how did the county go about its evaluation process of deciding to accept the property. So the area in red is the 1,000 acres that was acquired in August of 2014. The greater Eureka area is 45,000 people, about a third of the county population, and the city of Eureka does have a small park that was, Jerry Rohde mentioned on Tuesday, that was dedicated to the city in 1904, 60 acres. And then, right now the community forest is right in between, I should say, on this scale of public property in the Humboldt Bay area. Arcata is almost at 2,500 acres, and then we've got the Headwaters Reserve down the Elk River as almost 7,500 acres. The line in green shows the ownership of Green Diamond Resource Company in the Ryan Creek watershed, and that property is right on the outskirts of the city of Eureka. The white line is the city limits, and this property has been in private ownership since the 1850s, and there's been property transfers, between now and then. There have also been, a lot of discussions about what should happen at the urban interface. And on the left there is a junior high school that was carved out in the 1960s, and then there's Redwood Fields, a series of ball fields that was carved out in the 90s. And then over the last 20 or 25 years, there have been different ideas and plans for expanding the urban footprint and converting some of this property to development. So really in 2009 and 2010, this idea was initiated by Green Diamond and the Trust for Public Land. And the Trust for Public Land is a national conservation organization. They specialize in facilitating large conservation projects. Typically their model is to invest in appraisals and studies to look for opportunities, and they help facilitate public funding, and then they get a donation or some kind of compensation if the project is successful. So really they have the resources to do that due diligence and the upfront work. But it's really, Green Diamond's idea. And I just want to go through quickly some of the key factors. This is the county's point of view, and really Green Diamond and TPL have their own views. This became a three-party partnership. But the county's general plan update was in progress, looking at land use designations, circulation, housing inventory, and so decisions are being made at the outskirts of the urban areas. And there's certainly development potential at that interface, but at the same time, very slow housing market at the time and just in general in the Eureka area. And then there are also some specific local constraints in terms of roads and wastewater. A really important factor is just the conservation value of that forest. Looking at the Ryan Creek watershed being a coho supporting watershed, largely still in forest management. And so, definitely high conservation value, and that, because of the size of it, it sparked the interest of state and federal funding sources. And so, just some really important factors. Green Diamond has been a good neighbor in terms of harvesting timber, but it does lead to some friction at that boundary, and they were enduring and experiencing regular trespass use, just some of the challenges of doing harvest right next to residential areas. And so ultimately it became a business decision, but I think Green Diamond and TPL really saw the public benefits of a community forest. And I should say the community forest was one piece of the conservation strategy. There also have been developing a conservation easement for the remainder of the property that would extinguish the development rights. So really those two pieces go together. So at the very end of 2010, the announcement was made that Green Diamond and the Land Trust were putting forward this proposal. And nothing was secured, but it was time to roll it out to the public. And our late supervisor, Jimmy Smith, for that district, his comment was, at first glance, I think it shows a lot of promise. And so that brought it into my department, Public Works. We manage county parks and trails, and we get involved with watershed initiatives. And so the first thing we did is we went out to the public and asked them what their interests are, or what their concerns are. And the majority of the feedback was positive. People saw what dividends were being delivered by Arcata's community forest. Perhaps more important was what concerns were articulated. And so that let us know what we needed to plan for and work on and prioritize. And so, a variety of concerns, that it could be a financial burden to the county, inappropriate use. There was desire for it to be preserved, removing timber harvest, different concerns about OHVs, concerns that was too small, and then just the community integration piece. What impacts would this have on neighborhoods, and would it foreclose options for future traffic circulation options? It was a challenging budget time. So the red line is our county annual budget for general fund expenditures, and you can see several years of decline. And for local agencies, we often have there's an after effect of a recession, and what directly affects the state economy. There's also a trickle effect to local agencies with property taxes. So it was a difficult time for small agencies, downsizing, furloughs, budget cuts. We were more in a contraction mode, and that's when this opportunity was presented. The conditions have improved, but I will say that our community passed a half-cent sales tax almost 2 years ago out of concern for lack of financial resources to support public safety. And so, just really explains the economic context for this. So we did our due diligence. We looked at the need for road upgrades. It was really good working with Green Diamond. Their intent was for this to be successful for the county if we chose to take it on. Defining operating units, making sure that the road network would be sufficient to provide access. We didn't find any disasters on the roads. We found, what I think would be commonly expected for legacy roads. But there's certainly going to be a cost to do upgrades and then some decommissioning. We worked with BBW and Associates to do a cash flow analysis. Mostly young third growth stands that are actually ready for entry and thinning and commercial thinning. Some local pockets of second growth. Up to 700 acres of operating working forest with just really high site class and good productivity. So with that, that allowed us to make some long-term projections for revenues and expenditures. What was really important for this opportunity was that the state and the federal funding was there for the acquisition costs. And so we would not be, as we were reaching the decision point, we would not be entering any immediate debt service needs. But we certainly had to have our eyes wide open in terms of the initial startup costs, really for planning, staff capacity, building knowledge and just capability to manage a forest, as well as the road upgrades, and then adding the infrastructure for trailheads and trail use. So, we looked at City of Arcata's model very closely to really study how they make it work. They work really hard. They do a really good job of being efficient and effective, very creative, and a lot of community support. The net revenues from timber harvest are really important. They're essential. They're not enough. There's a need to supplement that with grants and donations. So as we looked at this, we saw this as not a windfall, an economic windfall, but we saw this as an enterprise that was worthy of investment, and timber harvest revenues would need to be reinvested into the property for a generation. And just given those tough budget times, we had to do this planning and analysis based on no, permanent encumbrance on the general fund. We also did other studies. We hired Jerry Rohde to do, a historical profile of the McKay Tract to really understand the human history. That's a part of the resource of this land, the resource value. Really identified, listening to the public about what social benefits they saw. The ability to basically step out your back door, to have a forest experience. If you're an equestrian, not to have to trailer, a horse to either Arcata or down to Avenue of the Giants. Just lots of opportunities to make this community forest, educational, really to provide a classroom for students of all ages, and also to give people an opportunity to see what modern timber harvest looks like. And I think it's going to be an opportunity that will benefit really the full forest product sector in terms of seeing where forest management is today. And one of the things we heard from the community was just how important redwoods are, and just the opportunity to develop a deep connection with this forest, to own it, to have a voice in how it's managed, to have immediate access to it, was really identified as something valuable. We certainly looked at the economic benefits. I don't know if Aaron Kelly's here, but I certainly welcome a economic contribution analysis of Arcata's forest in terms of indirect and induced economic benefits. These are harder to quantify, but certainly benefits to tourism. I'd say the main conservation value is keeping this prime timberland, avoiding conversion to non-forest use. We happen to be located adjacent to Redwood Acres Fairgrounds, and there's a lot of opportunity to boost utilization of Redwood Acres, and really quality of life. And that's really, you can't quantify that, but what that also does, it helps us attract families, keep families, help attract a workforce, people who are interested in these amenities for their community. And so, given all that, we reached a decision in April 2014 by the Board of Supervisors that there was a willingness to accept this property, and Supervisor Bone said that it represents a strategic opportunity for a long-term investment, and redwoods are part of our heritage, and this property is a treasure in Eureka's backyard. And so a lot of diverse dividends expected from this investment. We have a lot of work ahead of us. And so we've just reached the 2-year mark. The first thing we did was convene a citizen advisory group to help advise us on priorities, understand what the local interests are, looking closely at the road network, where we need to do immediate road improvements, and how can we find that essentially that framework for building the trail network. And then really our top priority is to get it ready to invite the public to use it and enjoy it. And what does that require? That requires parking, trailheads, and trails. And one of the challenges with this property is that it's largely landlocked, and so there's only a few areas where we have adjacency to public roads. There's no central point that we can bring people into, and so that requires us to work with adjacent property owners in several cases to consider and develop and negotiate and hopefully consummate some opportunities for public access. They have their own timelines for developing their property and their plans, and so that's a work in progress, and that's going to take time. So just some final observations on, why did this happen? It wasn't a community-driven process. It was really Green Diamond and TPL identifying that this was an opportunity with funding, with other business interests. I've just highlighted some of the key geographic and social factors. We really look closely at Arcata's model and some other examples. I think we concluded that once you've seen one community forest, you've seen one community forest. That they're really all going to be fundamentally different at different scales, different community profiles. It required time to come to this decision, especially in the budget climate. This is a big stretch for us, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us to make it work. We heard a lot from the community that they're willing to help us with volunteerism. I think we're going to need help from some funding partners down the road. I think the good news is we've got one more experiment on community forestry, and the more of these instances that can occur, we'll have more of a spectrum and more of a portfolio of examples that other communities can look at to help guide them to see if this is something that can work for them. And then just finally, many people have contributed to this. Green Diamond and TPL, City of Arcata, UC Cooperative Extension. It's been really, it's been a great experience. We've met a lot of great people. Thank you.
Questions? How do you plan to manage the forestry aspect? Not a forester on staff, but if you're consulting or how?
Yeah, so City of Arcata is fortunate to have Mark as an RPF on the Board of Forestry. I'm an engineer. I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. And, really for the last 2 years we've focused on the public access and trail planning piece. Really going into next year we're going to shift over to beginning the forest management piece and figuring out how to effectively and cost, efficiently address that. So I don't have an answer yet, but it's a big challenge. I mean, we're at that scale where we can't fund a science program, we can't fund a full RPF. So that's a big question we need to figure out. Very good.